The voice of sharing, dünya
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene.
Welcome back, this is Grace.
And of course, you're still with us on our very beautiful Wednesday morning, where we bring you again more news from Southeast Asia. We want to go all the way north to Myanmar, where we want to highlight a female candidate won the local election in Mon State.
That's correct. So former school teacher Mi Ja-lun Teo was elected head of the Tarana village track in Mon State in Myanmar, and that happened on Sunday. So this is basically very rare victory of a female leader in a local administrative structure traditionally dominated by men. And we are talking about the Mon State where it's not really a advanced state, or it's very sort of the village and a traditionally inherited sort of state where having a female leader, it marks quite a significant victory in their history.
What's interesting is worldwide we are seeing more and more women participation in politics. We all know the highlights in Taiwan election where a woman or a female candidate is being elected as the president. So now another great news having this former school teacher Mi Ja-lun Teo to head the Mon community. Of course, she's also a 41-year-old ethnic Mon woman, successfully contested on the local level election against, guess what, 3 men. And I guess people are maybe tired of men.
Well, there are about 220 people voted, and she won about 140 votes. So of course she is very pleased with the result, and also that shows that how people are supportive towards her being a leader in the Mon state. So also she's like I mentioned before, she's a formal Mon language teacher with the Mon National Education Department.
And she has done tremendous work, Grace, with the community development. In fact, she said that she worked a lot for her community development. Right. And this is how people actually trusted her and get to know well about what she is and how she can provide for her community.
And what she is going to do very soon is her priority will be obtain electricity for her village, because that's one of the basic needs when it comes to Mon State. And she also vowed to tackle the local corruption, and also citing instances where villagers gave money to administrative had to secure these recommendation letters to travel and even to obtain the ID cards. So those were the sort of under the table sort of actions that they've been doing for so long, and at this time she really wants to have a cleanse action towards the corruption and also to install the proper electricity in the village.
It's great that she's doing tremendous work when it comes to trying to improve her community and at the same time trying to, I guess, reduce all this level of activity that is not considered good in managing a state, right. In this case corruption. But a bit of a highlight about female member of parliament in Myanmar's union parliament. Apparently it has doubled from the current figure. In fact, what we are seeing right now, more and more women are holding important decision-making role, according to this report by UNDP in Myanmar on women and local leadership, established that passing of the World of Village Tract Administration Law in 2012, only 42% of 16,785 elected ward or village tract head were women. But this is still, it's not a good number, but it's growing in a way. In fact, according to the Asia Foundation, also we are seeing that women's participation in Myanmar government only account 0.11% is not a good number, but hopefully in the future more and more women like this former school teacher Mija Longto will rise up to the challenge leading Myanmar.
Well, that's one thing. At the same time, just by looking at how globally a lot of women leaders are stepping out, perhaps that's when people will slowly receive the perception of equality when it comes to gender. That female traditionally we were known as we're just housewives and they're taking care of the domestics, but now we have our own voices, and having a female a leader or someone who takes care of the state and in a sort of a distant village from the city, it is important for people to accept and also to go with that the flow of the advancement as well as the improvement for the better.
Yeah, I mean you have proof here in South Korea, a woman president is still on rank.
Well, Myanmar is, after all, they have the female president.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very big step forward towards to achieve the globalization.
That's the interesting part. More and more women in Asia are taking important roles in politics. Well, I want to go towards our own soil here. We are not doing well when it comes to environment, but Malaysia is trying its best to amend laws to target environmental polluters. And I'm actually focusing on the recent controversy regarding on the bauxite mining in Pahang.
Well, there is a target that Malaysia was also asked to amend laws to target these environmental polluters, and this is not a new news that we are just talking about here. It's something that Malaysia's Natural Resources and the Environment Minister is in fact planning on amending this legislation to enforce this liability for those behind this environmental pollution, which is very important. And like you mentioned before, it was regarding the bauxite mining.
Yeah. If you remember, at one point, a couple of weeks ago, when the film The Martian was out, and a lot of Malaysians put a similarity between The Martian and the bauxite mining area in Pahang, resembling the topography of Mars, where you see seas and rivers turning red in the Pahang state. But the reality is a worldwide known as the main source of aluminium. But in the Malaysia's Pahang state, the bauxite has earned a reputation as a source of environmental pollution and also corruption.
Well, it is also important to remember that all this plan to amend this legislation of especially for environmental polluters, it is very important to mark that with this all planned to table the amendment, it is to have to make sure the strict liability for those are responsible for environmental pollution. So for those who are in charge of producing all this bauxite mining, even oil spills, they have to know what they have done to the environment, not only in Malaysia but throughout, because the neighboring countries will be affected as well. So authorities have charged at least 4 land officers for accepting bribes from illegal mine operators. And also the officers have handed over the evidence of a river pollution to Pahang state government.
Mm-hmm. And we are also seeing all the pollution has caused the water at class 3. So according to the Department of Environment, when it comes to the National Water Quality Standard,
right,
class 3 is considered not clear anymore. And the evidence is there. I mean, everyone is saying that this is the new Mars in Pahang, which is kind of odd. And but all hope should not be dampened, because the Department of Environment is hopeful of healthier water reading after this suspension. And fishermen who have to deal with nervous customer also will be able to eventually have clearer water for the fishes. And according to Raja Haris Raja Salim Sungai Balok chief fisherman, he said that they will go out to the sea 25 nautical miles from the river, and they will guarantee 100% without addictive. I'm talking about the fishes, without poison and I mean, it's nice to hear the fishermen actually understanding about it, but at the same time, I think there are a lot of fishermen who can't afford to go that far out into the sea, and water and rivers, they depend highly. Is their livelihood.
Well, just to add one more, we really need to come up with solutions, but the solutions shouldn't be temporarily. It should have the permanent solution, because it's not for the sake of saving Pahang State, but it's for the whole people who live there and that they heavily rely on all those resources there. So by having and also just keeping all the polluters around there, it's not gonna make things better than this. So according to the state, it says for now the temporary ban has placed on bauxite mining, but what they really need to find is permanent solution that people can rely on and also practice together.
Yeah, I just want to give a bit of info about what exactly is bauxite, other than it resemble the demography of Mars. I just found this website very interesting, that it gives a bit of just a Wikipedia about what is bauxite. Of course, I initially said that it's an aluminium ore and the world's main source of aluminium, but more than that, it's actually not really a mineral. It's a rock comprised mostly of aluminium hydroxide, typically alongside small amounts of silica, iron oxide and other impurities. It's used mostly to make aluminiums, but other uses to make sandpaper, polishing powder, and many more. But one thing that is quite interesting is most top producers are from Australia, China, Brazil, and India. And up to this point, Indonesia has been China's major supplier. So I'm quite dumbfounded, or I guess it's such an irony that Malaysia seems to be interested in bauxite mining. Maybe they want to be the next best thing and taking up countries like Indonesia and China and all that. The subsequent production of aluminium involves electrolysis and usually located in countries where electricity is cheap, such as Iceland. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we still need bauxite, but I guess the way forward is how can we mine it at a cost where it doesn't pollute the environment.
That's correct. And Malaysia, in fact, has quite a long history, like you mentioned before, of mining, especially tin. But very recently, it's scarcely registered on the global market as a source of bauxite. So you mentioned about the bit of the information of bauxite. With that changed suddenly in 2014 January, when there was an attempt to boost its own aluminium smelting industry. So Indonesia banned exports of bauxite already. So perhaps it's a time for us, Malaysia, to step forward and then not to just to pollute the environment simply like that.
Definitely, they need to follow proper regulation. Anyway, we move on to another news. Talking about Indonesia, of course, the Jakarta attack is still fresh in everyone's mind. And President Widodo is seeking a new terror law, or in fact, not one, but, a string of terror laws to be reviewed, and hopefully we'll be able to use to tackle the increasing terrorist activities in Indonesia.
Well, that's very true, and it gives a lot of concerns to the public, especially after the Jakarta attack. So, with Indonesia President Joko Widodo, the authorities are said to fear that returning jihadis could launch even more attacks in Indonesia. And in fact, not only Indonesia, a lot of surrounding countries, including Malaysia, they are in the fear of of the next attack in certain areas. However, there are also critics. They have said the new laws could be used as a tool of repression. So this proposed new legislation would also allow officials to hold the suspects for longer than a week without a charge, and it could make it illegal for Indonesia to fight with the militants of so-called Islamic State in Syria and Iraq.
I see. That's quite a challenge. Hopefully that this would be something that would not be misused as an abuse to political opponents. But also we have to realize this. Officials believe that roughly 500 Indonesians have traveled to the Middle East to join the Islamic State. In fact, there were reports that about 100 are believed to have returned to the country, most of whom apparently do not see front line combat. And with the law, changes are likely to be approved in the parliament, as all major parties have expressed support to the proposal. But at the same time, Widodo also said that this is very pressing when it comes to addressing issues of terrorism. Many people have left for Syria and returned, and they are, causing fear to society.
That's for sure. The fear has already installed in the public when it comes to the attacks, Islamic attacks. And then especially after the last week's attack in Jakarta, so far, it was left with 8 people dead, and including 4 civilians. So it was the worst attack since 2009. And of course, when it comes to the fear, which was already installed in all the people's mind, it's something that the government really needs to strengthen the security level in each nation. However, there's also critics saying that the changes will be a step back to the sweeping powers which the police had under the dictatorship of General Suharto. So those are the sort of another the downfall of this, making a change towards this security forces. However, it is still very necessary coming from Joko Widodo, because a lot of people, most of people in Indonesia now, they are in fear that they don't know when and how these attackers will come and then suddenly bomb blast the area.
Completely agree with that. This is something that is really pressing. And I mean, a bit of a background of the recent Jakarta attack. We all know that 8 people perished, including 4 civilians. And of course, this attack was claimed by ISIS as a victory for them. But this is also the worst attack in Indonesia since 2009. And the suspected mastermind, which is Indonesian national Bahru Naim, is currently thought to be in Syria with the Islamic State. In the press conference in the Indonesian city of Solo, his family confirmed that it was his voice in the audio message released online where they urged authorities to show mercy to him. Why? I don't know why they do that, but I think his family is also concerned about him. And another news actually also highlighted that Solo has become such a hotbed area as a place where terrorists are being born.
Right. So, if you move on a bit further, there are also a lot of social media campaigns going on, and a lot of photos and posts that are put up, hashtag with "We are not afraid" or hashtag or "Pray for Jakarta." More.
And the Malay one will be "Kami tidak takut."
Yes,
which is great. I mean, it shows that the people of Jakarta are really strong against ISIS.
So it is really necessary that of course, the Indonesia president have come up with strongly mentioned that no place for terrorism on earth anymore, but hoped that there is no any tragic incident happen again in the future.
Yeah, and what's great about this, just to highlight that all parties, including Islamic Party, the PKS, have showed their support for the revision of the terrorist law in Indonesia. Hopefully, it can be a good checks and balance for the activity of terrorism in the state of Indonesia. But I think moreover than that, no, it would not be used as a power to abuse political opponents. But with Indonesia being such a democratic country and diverse political ideology, I don't think it will be used. But at the same time, I do believe Indonesia President Joko Widodo has done his best to address the issue.
Right.
Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll discuss on the arts and culture side as well the economic side of Southeast Asia.